I don't know if you know this or not, especially if you only join us online, but our church campus is right in the middle of the city of Bethesda, Maryland. And apparently the neighbors are doing something crazy outside with a big truck. It looks like they might be mulching something or some sort of other garden job. But if that's something you hear in the background, my apologies. We did our best to compress it out, but I'm sure it's still bleeding over. So enjoy the sounds of Memorial Day weekend lawn care of Bethesda, Maryland. Let's get into our lesson for today. In my work, it probably is not surprising to you to know that people are always asking me about God. I think it's funny that a person would think that I know more about God than they do, but that's just what comes with this gig. I have never found definitive explanations about God, though, to be helpful, neither for me nor for the people that ask me about God. Even though that's what we all want, I know. Wouldn't it be great to have a definitive explanation of God? What if I was just able to answer with a definitive answer like, God is a man, he's about 5'7", 170 pounds, he has dark hair and mocha-colored skin, he's incredibly creative and he's really good at math, but he's also awesome when he's at parties. His favorite foods are falafel, baba ganoush, and olives, of course, and he lives somewhere in the objects of the Kuiper Belt, just far away enough to be mysterious, but close enough to help us if we need him, because after all, he has the ability to travel at the speed of light and can be here in about 5.5 hours. I mean, wouldn't it be great if we just knew what God and who God is definitively? The thing is, though, even if we knew, it might not be the God that we want. But at least we'd have something concrete to put our faith in, right? But we don't know. And honestly, I don't think we ever will. In fact, if anyone ever tells you that they know without a doubt who or what God is, I would caution you to be wary of that person's belief system. So we are left in the human condition with things like metaphor and story and tradition. They are the very best we can do because God, if he, she, it is God at all, would have to be something more than an invented language can articulate. And if I am losing you there, my sincere apologies. I don't mean to shove you into a belief crisis on this broadcast today. But I only ask that you give me some grace and listen to the rest of this before you decide that I am peddling poison. So I cannot tell you who or what God is, and I don't think anyone can. But we can look at things in the natural world and metaphorically find glimpses and clues as to what God might be like. The metaphors are not comprehensive by any means, but they do help us with a lot of our questions. That passage that you just read on the screen before I came on is from the book of Acts. And in this story in the book of Acts, the Apostle Paul is in the presence of some big minds. He is sitting in front of a panel of Greek philosophers, and they are all grilling him about what he believes about God. And using language from their own culture and quotes from their own poets and philosophers and thinkers, he tries as best he can to explain who and what he believes God to be. And it all culminates in the part of the passage where it says this: "The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth, and does not live in temples built by human hands, as if he needed anything. Rather, he himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else. From one blood he made all the nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth. Why did God do that? Well, it tells us. God did this so that people would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from any one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being. And you see those quotation marks around that last bit? Paul here is quoting the Cretan philosopher Epimenides. Why is that important? It is important because Paul is saying, your God is my God, and my God is your God. And we're all just talking about it through our own traditions and cultures and languages. And that's beautiful if you think about it. But it's also kind of scary, right? Because, if that is true, then maybe it means I have some loosening up and opening up to do with the non-negotiables of my own belief system. Maybe it means that, oh my God, I am fallible. I want to share with you something that has helped me a lot over the years. And this is only how I think of it, and if it's helpful to you, wonderful. If it's not, just cast it aside. But like I said earlier, we are left in this life with metaphors that can help us. And Epimenides wrote, and the Apostle Paul affirmed, that God gives everyone life and breath and everything else, and in God we live and move and have our being. When I, Ryan, read those words, you know what I think about? I think about creatures living in the ocean. And I want to ask you to do something with me for a second, wherever you are, as long as you're not driving. Wherever you are, I want to ask you to close your eyes for a second. And I want you to imagine something with me. In your mind's eye, imagine that you are not sitting in the place that you are, nor are you a human being any longer. Rather, you are a creature living in the ocean. Just imagine that in your mind's eye for a second. You get to pick the creature. Maybe you're a shark, maybe you're a dolphin, maybe you're a crab or a lobster, or even just a tiny fish. Maybe you are a cluster of kelp or an urchin or an anemone. But you are alive and living your life in this thing called ocean. And most of the time, you're not even aware of that. You don't even pay any attention to it. It's ubiquitous. But everything that has been, everything that is, everything that will be, happens in ocean. Ocean is that which sustains you and feeds you. Ocean is that in which and through you make all of your movements and take all of your journeys in your existence as a creature of the ocean. Ocean is that which passes around you and through you, through your gills, keeping you alive. Ocean is just what your world is comprised of. You are in it. It is in you. You are because of ocean. And if you decide to leave ocean, you will cease to exist. You will dry up and dry out and suffocate. So ocean is wonderful. But it's also really strange because as much as ocean does and is for you, it also gives life to and sustains your enemies. The predators that spend their days and their lives hunting you, swimming after you, trying to eat you, they are also alive because of ocean. And in turn, the things that you eat that are afraid of you, that you spend your days hunting so you can stay alive, they are also sustained by ocean. Everything that lives, everything that breathes, as far as sea creatures go, everything that is because of ocean. Okay, now you can open your eyes. This is how I like to think of God when I read this verse from the book of Acts and the many others that are like it. When I do think of God this way, I become more and more suspicious that God might not be a being at all, but rather being itself. Perhaps I don't need to do certain things or believe certain things for God to be more alive in me. Maybe I am alive in God. It's just that God, like the ocean to a sea creature, is so ubiquitous, so all-present, so all-pervasive, that I don't often think about God. And maybe that is what the spiritual life is all about. Remembering to think about God. Like a fish pondering ocean. What am I swimming through? What is this that I'm breathing? Why am I alive? Pondering the strangeness and the vastness and yet the utter closeness of the thing in which it lives and moves and has its being. Maybe that is what prayer is. Maybe that is what meditation is. Maybe that's what we are singing about and singing to when we sing in worship. We're not praying and singing to another creature in the ocean, but to the very ocean itself. Not to a being, but to being itself. The God who made the world and everything in it is the Lord of heaven and earth, and does not live in temples built by human hands. And he is not served by human hands as if he needed anything. Rather, he himself gives everyone life and breath and everything else. From one blood he made all the nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth. God did this so that people would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from any one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being. What would your life begin to look like if you thought about God that way? In all of the movements and journeys that you take this week, in getting on the train, in sitting in traffic, in working at your job, in coming home and cooking and managing family and children and phone calls and text messages. What would your life begin to look like if in all of those moments, whether they are blissful or stressful, you started thinking, I am in God right now. All of this is taking place inside of God right now. I am alive. I am moving and I have being in God at this very moment. And what if you could hold that thought a little longer each time, decreasing the gaps between the times where you're thinking that? What if that's all that this is about? What if God isn't so hard to imagine after all? As we go into a time of stillness, meditation, and reflection now, I just want to ask you to reflect on this lesson, whether it's troubling to you or encouraging to you or a blend of both. Just to allow yourself to let it take shape in you, uniquely you, just as you are, wherever you are. We also invite you to receive the Eucharist, communion with us at this time, wherever you're watching from. If you don't happen to have unleavened bread and wine, wherever you are, whatever you have available is sufficient. But let us take a moment to think about this idea of our living, our moving, and our being in God. Amen.